All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Info to Go. This event is brought to you by the Idaho Commission for Libraries with funding support through the Institute of Museum and Library Services. My name is Dylan Baker. I am filling in for our continuing education consultant, Tammy Hollyhouse, who is out right now. And I'm going to be your host today. If you have any kind of technical issues, any questions, anything I can help with, just feel free to type those in the chat box at the bottom of the page. I'll do my best to help throughout the presentation. It is being recorded. We will make this recording available on our Info to Go archives on our website, and so you will be able to access that later. But without any further ado, I would love to turn this session over to who you actually came here to listen to and deliver a great presentation, and that is Elizabeth Ramsey of Boise State University. She's got a fantastic presentation for us today, so feel free to take it away whenever you're ready, Elizabeth.
Okay, thanks, Dylan, and thanks to everybody for joining me for lunch, and thanks, Dylan, for all the technical troubleshooting. This is my first ever webinar, so I was fairly intimidated, but he got me all settled, and I think you are too, so let's get going. Like I mentioned, there's a handout for you, and it is not complete. There are blanks there for you to add. Fill in and add what you need. This presentation was originally done at the Idaho State Library Association conference in 2017. Yeah, and so this session today may not last the entire time because that session was fairly interactive. We stopped and paused and talked quite a bit. So I want to thank those participants too, because I've amended this presentation according to the comments that they gave me during and after. It's based on Tasha Souza's presentation here at Boise State, and I've adapted it a little bit, but I did want to mention that she was the founder of this idea, but I think it's a really timely one for us. So let me know if you have any questions. Dylan, should we handle those at the end of the session?
Yeah, I think maybe at the end would be easiest. Feel free to type them into the chat box when you have questions. I'll try to collect them. So feel free, you can ask questions as we go along, and I'll try to collect them. But yeah, I think maybe if that works best for you, Elizabeth, we can just handle those at the end of the session.
That sounds good. All right, let's get going then. So this is what we're going to do today. I feel like in considering the source of microaggressions and defending ourselves and others who are targets, we may consider how we can reduce committing microaggressions ourselves. So this is what we're going to get through today. Look at examples, figure out what are the considerations when we're faced with them, and hopefully feel empowered to engage positively when we're faced with a microaggression. So this is the one of the definitions of microaggression. It was originally used in the 70s, particularly about racial microaggressions. But microaggressions occur against all marginalized groups and in relation to all aspects of human identity. Usually, it's entirely unintentional, based on ignorance or a subconscious bias, which we are all subject to. Some examples are included in the pictures that you're going to see in this presentation. I can give you an example of a microaggression I inflicted on someone when I was a young woman. I was working at a fundraiser for a public radio station with an African American man, and we were talking about our favorite programs on the station, and he mentioned he liked an early morning bluegrass program. I expressed my astonishment, not once, but a number of times, until he gave me a sidelong look and moved away. It was only later that I realized what I had done, inflicting my ignorant assumption on him, that African American people only like certain kinds of music, and bluegrass certainly wasn't one of them. It was unintentional on my part, but it certainly hurt him, or at least it made him wary of me, and probably reinforced his own assumptions about white people. So I'd like to ask you whether you have ever been the victim of a microaggression. We're going to do a little poll here. So go ahead and if you would kindly respond to, have you been the victim? Okay. That is not surprising. They're quite common, aren't they, in our personal and professional life? Let's look at our next question. So we've got 92% of you who responded said, yep, I've been a victim. Let's next look at whether you have ever been a witness to a microaggression against somebody else. Okay, has everyone participated that wanted to? 100% of us have witnessed a microaggression. All right, and here's the last one, maybe a more difficult one. Have you ever been a perpetrator of a microaggression? Okay, almost 95% of us have been a perpetrator. And I venture to say probably entirely unintentionally. So it looks like we have a pretty clear idea of what microaggressions look like and feel like. So I think we probably understand that microaggressions do matter because it all comes down to some basic human needs, such as safety. We can't operate at our best when we feel that we have to have our defenses up all the time for fear of an attack, even if it's in the form of a basic misunderstanding. Humans also need to feel like they belong. A well-functioning team, classroom, or organization depends on its members feeling like their presence, their contributions are recognized, understood, and valued. Being the victim of a microaggression can make us feel personally diminished, right? That feeling like you're 2 inches tall. Knowing someone has witnessed a microaggression and done nothing affects trust in that person and perhaps, more importantly, the institution they represent. So not responding to microaggressions can adversely affect a library's efforts at diversity and inclusion. So let's look at some things that we have to consider when we're faced with a microaggression and contemplating speaking up in return. There's a lot to consider. So we have to think about the aggressor's characteristics. So their tone of voice, how loud they're speaking, their body language. Yeah, do we feel safe in mentioning something at the time of a microaggression? We also have to think about the relational conditions between us and the person who committed a microaggression, or if we were the perpetrator, us and the victim. So we have to think about things like power differentials. Is the person who committed the microaggression a fellow staff member? What's our relationship with them? Are we friendly with them, or is it a little more prickly? Did your boss commit a microaggression? How difficult would that be to think about stepping in and speaking up? Was it a patron? You also have to think about the environment at the time a microaggression occurs. Are you at the front desk and it's packed with patrons who need your attention? Or is it in front of a group? Or is it perhaps one-on-one? And you also have to think about whether it's direct or indirect. So did somebody comment to you about somebody else? And your personal conditions. This is really important because maybe you're feeling stressed. This probably wouldn't be the best time to address a minefield like a microaggression. So you have to think about, where's your head at? Are you feeling calm? Because that's going to be really important as we try some of these techniques for addressing microaggressions. So here's one communication strategy. This is kind of an amended one from Tasha Souza. So you can note the observed behavior, comment, okay, I heard you say, and perhaps ask a follow-up question. We have to be careful about why and our tone of voice when we use the word why. That can be a little difficult. You can talk about how the slight might be interpreted by others, how it made you feel, and ask appropriate action. So this one could be a little dicey. Let's look at that again. So note what you heard. Maybe ask a follow-up question. Explain how it could be interpreted. Express how it made you feel. This is important. And request, I would like you to. Could you please ask for an action? So let's practice with the scenario. Someone you supervise, so maybe this is a little bit easier because you've got the power here, at the reference desk jokingly says to a tall African American man, you must play basketball. What do you think is a possible response? I'll give you a little time to think about it. Let's do some Jeopardy music while you do. Do 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 do. Are you ready? Okay, here's a possible response. I heard you say that the man who just checked out his books must play basketball. What made you say that? I think that this is a generalization based on stereotypes, and that it might make him uncomfortable if he heard, I feel uncomfortable with this generalization. I'd like you to consider where the stereotype came from and why it might not be appropriate to express. So, do you think this is possible in your workplace? It all depends on the scenario, right? And it's kind of, at ILA, we decided that it is very important that you approach these in a spirit of curiosity, that it is more curious about and understanding, this feeling of wanting to understand. So that's important. But there's always the chance that the person is going to react defensively. So you have to be prepared to respond non-emotionally, right? Let's take a look. We've got these other situations that were created to give you a little more practice. Think about a question that you might ask your colleague who says about a patron wearing a headscarf, "Those people always let their children run wild in the library." Maybe an appropriate first question would be, who do you mean, those people? That might give her a moment to explain about how she's grouping a particular group of people together. And then maybe you can unpack that together. B would probably be a little more difficult to do. A patron at the circulation desk overhearing someone speak in Spanish and saying loudly, "You're in America now, speak English." We've all seen some examples of heated moments like this recently posted on social media, in restaurants, in parks, at swimming pools. Perhaps that can help you feel like, yeah, this isn't appropriate. It is my place to speak up. We regard libraries as democratic institutions, freely available to all. So, but this could be difficult as a patron. Again, you have a lot of considerations: their age, how loud they're speaking. Maybe it's just a matter of interrupting and saying, "I'm sorry, we don't regard it as important that people speak English in the library." To approach somebody a little more softly rather than saying, "Why did you say that?" Or, yeah. C, a lot of people, when we spoke about this situation in the ILA conference, they said this could just be a child being a child and wanting to sit by their friends. It may have nothing to do with ethnicity at all. And we also have to consider the parents could be there. So do you want to step in and correct a child in front of their parent? So that could be, a little bit difficult as well. So these are some potential reactions if you decide that you're going to step in and confront somebody who's committed a microaggression. So you have to kind of ask yourself, will talking about this more be beneficial and productive? What's my current level of stress? Am I able to respond non-emotionally? So if you decide to take it further and you've gotten a response like this, take a deep breath. Take a moment to pause, not just for yourself, but for the other person who is responding kind of defensively. So you might state that you're not blaming the person. You're only expressing the way the comment made you feel. But stay open to their input and expression of their feelings. Again, approach this as an opportunity to understand somebody's viewpoint. Where are they coming from? And maybe they'll be open to hearing how their comments made you feel. They may not, but at least you tried. And we've come up with this term micro-resistance in response to microaggression. So these are just these little ways to try to mitigate or minimize the impact of microaggressions. And it's going to take some practice. I have to admit that I am still practicing because these days identity can be a very charged topic of conversation. So let's approach each other empathetically, kindly, and patiently. I think if we strengthen our abilities, we can make our libraries better places for all. And it's not just about approaching people who we've witnessed as perpetrators. It's about thinking about our own assumptions. As human beings, we are all operating under a set of assumptions. It's how we cognitively process things quickly. So we may have to check ourselves as much as anybody else. So maybe that's a good place to start. If you find that you've made a comment that maybe someone has not felt welcome or included for, to think about, where did my assumption come from? So if we strengthen our abilities to respond to microaggressions, I think we'll strengthen our institutions too. We truly will have an inclusive and supportive environment for ourselves, our teammates, our patrons, and I think we can collaborate with groups and organizations who are committed to these ideas, and maybe offer more trainings and opportunities for continuing education. As I've said in trainings before, again, these subconscious or implicit biases, they work against our best intentions. So anything that we can do to strengthen our resolve to work against that will be better for ourselves and our libraries. Well, that was awfully quick. I'm sorry, but that's all I have for you today. Do you have questions? I feel like I should go back to this. Slide 13.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it looks like slide 13. Let's see. Getting some more questions and other people typing in here too. We've got says William Myhill says he teaches a course at Syracuse University called Accessible Library and Information Services. They include the topic of microaggressions and introduce students to microaggressions towards people with disabilities. Many are not aware of these.
Oh, absolutely. As I said, microaggressions occur against most aspects of our identities, from ability to gender, age, weight. Any apparent indicator of identity can be used by someone in a microaggression. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sue had a question, Sue Walker, about what about interacting with persons who intend to have their words demean others?
That would be a macroaggression, wouldn't it? Yeah, I feel like that it's even more important to step up when somebody has made it clear their intent, that isn't one of these little assumptions or subconscious biases, because if they do that when you're near, they are almost implicating you as someone who agrees with them, to speak up like that. So I feel like in those times it's even more important to speak up. And I don't know if it's any easier. There's a part of me that thinks maybe it is, because you don't have to wonder, oh, are they just being ignorant, or have they never seen somebody who looks like that or does that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty tough. Another question here. Our statement. Dina says that they have been thinking about incorporating training on this into HR onboarding would be a great place to start. That makes sense.
I don't know of a recommended list, but I do know that Harvard has a project online called, I think it's Implicit Bias, where you can do a little test to kind of evaluate your implicit biases, and I think it's Project Implicit, and it's through Harvard University, and I'd say that is a good place to start.
Fantastic. Yeah, it looks like Dina just shared the link to that project.
Yay! So, thanks, Dina.
You can get that in the chat. So yeah, that was a good some information about finding trainers and that sort of thing. Sharon Shanks asks, do you feel that the current political climate has given people the impression it is okay to demean or disrespect people that are unlike themselves?
Oh, don't you know it? Absolutely. I think it's being I don't want to get political, but I think when people's disregard for others' identities is exemplified at the top, you know, at the top of the heap, it kind of pulls the rock up and lets other people crawl out. They decide that it's okay to express that hateful speech is okay to express. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Here's a very good specific question. Ellie Epperson asks, Elizabeth, do you have any tips for when a patron is being microaggressive while asking for your assistance in the library? They say they have that happen a lot with their height and never have a great response.
Oh, yeah. I can relate to that. Because they're a patron. Yeah. My initial response is, way to make me feel even smaller. But no, that's probably not helpful. Does anybody have some advice for Ellie when they comment on your height?
That's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a colleague when I lived in Japan, and he was 6'5", and he had people just acting like he wasn't even a human being, bouncing around him and wanting to take pictures with him. So I saw how tiresome it was for him to deal with that comment on something all the time. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer, Ellie. I think your patience is appreciated with people's ignorance. Maybe you could say, do you know how many times I hear that every day? I wonder how people would respond to that. Oh, Carol, do you see that one? I'm happy to help you when you speak respectfully to me. Otherwise, I'm happy to find someone who can help you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And Deborah Hinkle had a comment about they have a person on staff that says things that are mean and means something vulgar, and that person knows they do this. Usually, they do it around them because they know they don't like it. Yeah.
And these comments can create an environment that could be reportable to a supervisor if they're bad enough, and yeah.
Yeah.
And Tina says, do you know that my ability to help you is not connected to my height?
It's great. Yeah, Molly is has a similar comment too here. Um, fantastic. That's great.
Oh, Sandra, the microaggression diminishes. I guess I think that term is used largely based on intent. I think while microaggressions are ignorant, the person usually doesn't intend to be mean or to diminish the other person. Yeah, I get what they're saying. So I think there is a difference between a microaggression and a macroaggression. As some of our colleagues pointed out, you can often tell when somebody is saying something deliberately. There's an intent to harm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm. Well, I welcome everybody's input, and I neglected to put my contact information. I'm here at Boise State. You're welcome to email or phone me. I'm always out there trying to learn, strengthen my ability to respond to these things, understand people who have been the victim of microaggressions. So if you have any other questions or anything that can help me, I gratefully receive them. Elizabeth Ramsey at boisestate.edu.
Fantastic, yeah, and we will have the recording of this available here. I'll be putting it up later this afternoon on the Info to Go page, and if you happen to register for that, you'll also get a link with that link to the recording, and then there'll be a short survey for you to fill out with what you thought about this Info to Go session, if there's any improvements we can make to future Info to Go sessions. And while I have you here real quick, speaking of future Info to Go sessions, I do want to tell you that the next month's on September 17th is about Summer Summit for Schools, continuing the conversation. So Summer Summit was an event that we had, I think, last month, and it was a conversation for school librarians and about what's going on in their areas. And our school library consultant, Jeannie Standel, will be facilitating that conversation, and we'll be giving you kind of a condensed version of what happened at Summer Summit. So do feel free to register for that at the Info to Go page. And you can also see what's coming up in the next few months as well. But I really do appreciate your time here today, Elizabeth. That was a fantastic presentation, and I know I got a lot out of it too.
Thanks for your help today, Dylan, and thanks everybody else for your comments and participation.
So thank you so much, folks. And yeah, I'll get to make sure this recording gets posted here very soon. And thank you all again for attending today. And really do appreciate your support. And we'll let you get back a little early. You can enjoy the rest of your lunch hour or get back to the rest of that important work. And we'll see you again next month for another Info to Go. But until then, have a great rest of your week, great rest of your month.